Hello and welcome to the Technophiles Podcast. This is episode number 194 for Friday, May 30th. I'm David Geisler, your host for tonight's show, and I am joined yet again with the regular cast, Mr. Shawn Kerr and Miss Tina Urch. Shawn, how are you tonight?
I'm doing pretty fantastic.
All right, very good.
Yeah,
Do you have a good week and a half? Do you have a good Memorial Day?
Yeah, I did actually. Played some Dungeons and Dragons, started a new group up, and it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, an excellent way to spend the excellent weather we had this weekend. I hope it was in a picnic out on the beach is where you were playing Dungeons and Dragons.
No, it was inside of a room. It was actually right after it started raining that day.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
So at least I had an excuse to be inside. But Memorial Day, I spent like the entire day outside.
Memorial Day was great this
It was
season.
so
Finally,
fantastic.
the weather's getting better here.
So, yeah.
No, that is cool. I heard that I did hear through the grapevine that your campaign, you're having a lot of fun with it right now.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
I would say something, but some of the people in the group actually listen to the podcast. And
you don't want to give anything away.
Yeah, I can't give anything away.
Fair enough. Tina Urch.
Hello.
How you doing?
Good.
You just had a vacation or something. You were talking about in the pre-show.
I had a lovely vacation down to North Carolina to visit a girlfriend from high school. It was, the weather was perfect.
Was it nice down there too?
Oh, it was gorgeous. It was like in the 80s every day.
It was amazing.
Beautiful. I spent
here in
a
Milwaukee,
ton of time outside and also a little time inside. I finally saw the Lego movie.
Ooh.
Done. I bought it last week.
Yeah. And did you see it with you? Was he there with you? No.
Because he tweeted last week, finally saw the Lego movie. It's like I can't
No, he saw
quote
it before I did.
He said it was the best well-written movie of the year and all this stuff.
I actually saw it on Monday.
Yeah.
There's a theater right near my friend's apartment that is...
Wait a second. You saw it in a theater?
Yeah. For $2.50.
Oh, is this one of those like
like a budget
Pokedoke towns that get it
a
months later?
budget theater. They just have a budget theater.
Sure. That makes sense.
I saw the Grand Budapest Hotel for $250 and I saw the Lego movie for $250.
That's worth it.
Yep.
That's a good way to spend $5.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Two very good movies, huh?
Yeah.
Did you enjoy it?
Great movies.
It's amazing, isn't it? The Lego movie.
It's incredible.
It's
incredible.
Anyway.
I don't want to derail us, but
and it's one of those movies with the third act twist. It's one of those movies that when you see it a second time, all of these little nuances make so much more sense.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to spoil anything, but like, how can a motorcycle drive on a monorail? Well, after the third act twist, in the first act, the second time you watch it, you go, of course that's how a motorcycle would ride on a monorail. And I think I haven't given anything away. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like when a helicopter crashes, of course it crashes like... Oh, it makes so much sense, and it's awesome.
Nice.
Sorry.
I really need to see this.
Yes,
I own it. Let's get a few. I think a few other people haven't seen it that we know. Maybe we'll have a movie night here or something.
That would be fantastic.
Let's talk about our. It's been a while. We're catching up. It's been a week and a half or something. We had Memorial Day. It was great. We're going to talk about two stories tonight. We're going to talk about Apple. Well, Apple's WWDC is coming up. I always
Worldwide Developers Conference.
I always want to say WDDC, and I'm just switching things around. Worldwide Developers Conference is coming up just a matter of weeks now. And of course, the speculations and the rumors are all over the place. But there seems to be one going on right now about, it seems to have some legitimacy behind it. I'm not making correct sentences here.
From
But
the Financial Times.
About maybe Apple is going to propose what is essentially like an iHome type of situation. Yeah. And we'll talk about it and what that might actually mean. I think the way it compares to Nest is interesting. Google might be kind of getting into this kind of stuff too. And we'll talk about it. We'll take a break and come back. And I'm excited.
Yeah.
Spiritually, Mr. Drew Nowakowski is with us tonight because he tweeted us just the other day, like 2 or 3 days ago.
Recent, yeah.
And he said, he made some joke in his tweet, but he essentially sent us a story from Yahoo Tech titled, How to Stop Google Maps from Remembering Everywhere You Go All the Time. And there's no fear mongering here. I'm not saying, oh my gosh, holy crap, but I thought it was interesting too. And we certainly wanted to honor Drew submitting a story, even though he's not on the show with us tonight.
Drew, you are here with us in spirit.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you guys want to do? You want to do the Apple story?
Yeah. Let's get cracking.
Shawn, would you be comfortable setting it up?
Yeah, absolutely.
I know technically I found it, but I mean...
Yeah, absolutely. So basically what the rumors are is that at WWDC, Apple is going to announce, basically, as you said, an iHome, which would be just a sort of connectivity that would run through all of your devices, similar to how Nest does it. Smoke detectors and thermostats and all of your lights and all sorts of other things. And so you found 2 articles. One was from Mashable and one was from TechCrunch, I believe it was.
One was Mashable, one was Engadget, actually.
Engadget.
And I think I found the Engadget one first, and basically one of the articles I found was, holy crap, Apple might do this! And that's kind of all it was, and I kind of thought, okay, well, it'll be worth mentioning. And then a day later, maybe half a day later, I was digging around, and I found a little bit more. At least Mashable kind of responded and said 5 things Apple kind of could do. Yeah. Again, speculation, but at least it starts a conversation for us.
Absolutely. And so I thought it was interesting. So the Financial Times is the people who, I guess, sort of broke the story. And so it comes from sources inside of Apple that this is going to be a thing. So a little bit of legitimacy there. But basically...
most WWDCs, this is about the time when something leaks that is real.
Yeah.
You know, like the, the 5 being 1 row of icons taller, like we kind of knew around this. This is the time when things start to kind of come out. 5C, 5S, whatever it was last year was kind of like the thing.
Absolutely.
We're kind of expecting the new OS X. I'm very excited about that. I can't wait for my desktop experience to be updated a little bit, and the new phones being bigger. But it sounds like this iHome thing might be a big thing, and they might pull it. They may not even talk about it. But we've been talking about Apple TVs. We've been talking about iWatches. We've been talking about all these things that kind of haven't happened yet. And in the last year, I think there has been a little bit of subtext on this show of kind of. I don't think any of us have ever said it, and I don't even know if any of us have fully thought it, but there is a little bit of like, okay, Apple, it's time. Like, what's going on here?
Yeah. We're waiting for something new, and you're not bringing it.
Or at least, like, there's talk about what they do with a TV, talk what they do with a watch, talk what they do with a thermostat, but we're not seeing anything. Well, maybe they're holding it all here to build this infrastructure.
Yeah. And so they've got a bunch of different speculative ideas. Like you said, they've got like 5 things that Apple could do. And so one of the things that I thought was most interesting was the idea that they would take the existing Apple TVs and they would turn them into the hub for all of this technology.
Right.
Which I thought was the most interesting part of the article.
Right.
So basically, if you own an Apple TV, they would push some sort of app or some sort of...
Which, from a hardware point of view, is loosely an iPhone 4 inside.
Yeah.
It's basically an iPhone 4 processor, and all the chunks and the parts inside are in that space.
Yeah.
So it's possible you can just update the firmware or update the OS or whatever.
Oh, absolutely.
Pardon me. I'm getting excited.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And just kind of connect everything via Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or however you want to do it, and then just put everything together. And so you would have your lights connected to your Apple TV, and you could push what you want your lights to do to your Apple TV, which would push to your lights, and all sorts of connectivity, all based around the Apple TV. So I thought that was sort of the most interesting idea.
I think it was interesting too because you'd expect them to make some other kind of hub, and maybe they will. You'd expect it to be their Airwave or iWave or iAir or whatever it's called. I honestly can't remember right now. Airport, because not too many people use them, I don't think. I think more people are purchasing Apple TVs than airports, I have to be honest. And
so what's an airport?
Well, right, exactly. Yeah. It's Apple's wireless router, basically.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
It's just their version of a wireless router, and they could easily have said, oh, no, this should be the hub. But I think let people have their wireless routers, let the Apple TV be the brains part.
Yeah, absolutely. And one interesting thing that they brought up was that currently Apple has sold 14 million of the most current generation Apple TVs.
Technically the Apple TV 3.
Yeah, and the Nest has been selling 100,000 units a month.
Nest, as we've spoken about already, is a smart thermostat that Google purchased a few months ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I don't want people to confuse that it's part of the iHome thing.
Yeah. So if you compare Nest, which is basically what Apple is sort of aiming to do in their own unique way, obviously, Nest is selling 1.2 million units a year, maybe, if they're like at their peak. And if you look at the Apple TV as a hub, they've already got 14 million homes stocked with this thing where this could go.
And it's just a software update. They could you don't need to sell another thing. Mm-hmm. It could be just a software update, which is kind of brilliant.
So
Could be.
I thought that was kind of the most interesting part of
I would agree.
the whole conversation. So you were looking
Well,
like
I mean,
you had,
no, I think that's really it, and we can probably cut the break here in a little bit. But just an iHome experience in general, does that mean now that we're buying a bunch of little things? Does that mean, Tina? Do you have any thoughts about this kind of a thing? Do you think, what if Google were to take a route like this? Google probably will be taking a route like this.
Or better yet, question for Tina: now that you're going to be a homeowner soon,
Well, that's kind of where I was going with this. I just wasn't doing it very well.
Would I get a...
What do you think about having,
Let's do generic. Tina, you just bought a new home and you're moving in. Would you be inclined at all to make your house smart? You know what I mean?
I think it'd be a fun project because I have interest in that sort of thing. One of the challenges that the Mashable article looked at was that we just don't look to technology to solve certain problems in our home. It's not the way people think yet. And
Which,
so,
I'd argue that, but I do think the majority still does not.
The majority do not. One example they give is, we try to conserve power by unplugging things.
Right.
And that is just like the way that we have been solving things for however long.
Right.
It's going to be a paradigm shift for people to start thinking of like a smart technology in their home being a way to replace having to take those other measures.
Yeah.
I would be so inclined to make my apartment, my condo, smart if I could, especially the thermostat.
Right.
Because my classic move is, I'm freezing. Let me turn the thermostat up a few degrees, warm up the apartment. I'll turn it down before I leave.
Right.
And then I leave and I'm gone for 12 hours at work and I'm going, I'm paying for all of this heat that I'm not using, and I get so
And then there's
mad.
even those weird kind of strategies of like sometimes you don't want to cool the place down too much because it might actually take more power to warm it back up. There's a certain level of bringing it down that still makes sense.
Yeah.
And of course things like the Nest run these algorithms to figure all that stuff out. I think the generation that is comfortable, not to dumb it down too much here, but the generation that's comfortable with having Netflix recommend things to them will be the generation that wants to say, what are you, crazy? Of course I don't want to set my thermostat. Like I want it to just learn me.
Yeah. I think it'll transition as... like with any brand new technology, not a new version of a technology, but like, we have cell phones all of a sudden, like when that happened.
Or cell phones, smartphones,
The really like tech savvy people who are interested in it jump on it first, right?
Yep.
And then you've got the holdouts who are like, I don't need that. I've never needed it. Why do I need it now?
Right.
And then it just becomes ingrained as other generations are raised with it. And I think it's just going to have to be the same process for a smart home. But I absolutely think that's where we're headed.
I also think there's one more detail here. What were you going to say, Shawn?
I was going to say, I think it's going to be something similar to Siri, where I think younger generations are being very, very comfortable and
very good point.
Understanding how to use this sort of technology. And that because they're growing up, like I'm getting to the point where I'm using and I don't have actual Siri, but I use Google voice search on my phone all the time through Google Chrome. And so I'm getting used to that and I'm figuring out, and I use that more often than I do actually typing into my web browser at this point.
I'm finding more and more, even when I text people, even if I open up the text, if I'm alone, it's easier to just talk it.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is kind of a weird double irony. You're talking to text instead of just talking to talk. But in the long run, it actually still is more efficient.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to actually say hello and you don't have to like hang up the all that
Exactly.
stuff.
And so, like I was saying, like my stepmom just got a new iPhone, and I was showing her Siri, and she just kind of, like when I mentioned it to her.
What does she have, a 5C or something?
She has a 5C. And so, like, she was like, and she grabbed her glasses and was going to put them on. And I was like, no, you don't, because I was telling her, I said, ask Siri what the weather is like. And Siri just tells you what the weather is like. So I was like, don't put your glasses on. Just hold the home button and then just ask it what you want.
Yeah.
And she was just kind of like super baffled and super confused and didn't know what was going on. And then when I showed her how it works, she was just like, oh, that's fantastic. But I think the younger generations are just like, well, of course it works that way.
Right.
And I think that's going to become the standard for smart homes.
Yeah, this is right. And this is always this story will always be that This will always be that story whenever there's adoption rates, you know?
New,
Oh, yeah.
But I do remember 6 months ago, maybe it was a year ago, maybe a little bit more. It was before either of you were on the show. We had an article on the show where I don't remember who found it. Apple had released a little bit of data about who was actually using Siri. And they were finding that the demographics that were older were, using Siri like once every 3 months, and usually it was like a joke question.
Yeah.
Oh,
And they were
okay.
deducing that they were probably just kind of showing it off to people or whatever.
You know-
and they're finding that the younger generation was just using it like crazy
Yeah.
daily.
Yeah, no, I remember when Siri first came out, and there was a guy who, a coworker of mine, who got the brand new iPhone. He was like, "Look at what I can do," and yeah, that's exactly what he did. I remember him showing it and asking like 3 or 4 questions, and then I don't think I ever saw him use Siri again.
You know, and it does take a little it does take a little bit of a shift in your head to just realize, oh, geez, I can just ask it that. And
Yeah.
sometimes complicated things. Maybe we're getting off track here a little bit. I would like to come back to one more point, and then let's go to break. 10 years ago, there was a huge trend in building homes where they were getting, not only were you getting your plumbing and your electricity and your phone lines put in, people were completely putting wired networks in their houses.
Yeah.
10 years ago, maybe 15, but I think still 10 even. It was like a big trendy thing for people with a little bit extra money to do. And you'd go downstairs and there was a patch of 30 wires coming in and out, going to hubs and all this wacky stuff. And then pretty much wireless became the standard.
Yep.
And so be it. What I'm trying to point out here is transitioning your home into a smart home or building a smart home from scratch doesn't even require a new infrastructure.
Yeah.
It doesn't
yeah.
even require some version of putting all these wires in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they're all just talking to you. The infrastructure is just math. It's not even something that's physical. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I think that's a very important point to make here.
I think that's the really interesting point, because you're spending probably hundreds of dollars trying to put those networks in. You're spending, an extra $50 for your smart thermostat or your smart...
Some of them are 150.
Yeah, and basically what you're doing is you're paying a little bit extra money for that functionality rather than spending hundreds of dollars expecting it to last, into infinity.
I agree. And so what I imagine happening with something, that's cool too, because once we transcend physical and it's math, now we can just update things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's something that's really brilliant about non-physical video media, is that for the most part, we can always just continue to write software that will re-export that to the next version of whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, it's not going to necessarily become a higher definition, but we're not really going to have this problem of which is it, DVD to Blu-ray to blah, 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 to piece of crap to blah, blah, blah.
I need my mini DV VCR.
Right. We're kind of out of that space now, because those transitions will just happen through math, unless it becomes like a political thing, but we're not going to go there. And I don't mean politics, I mean business.
Yeah.
Tina, let's close this out with, I can imagine a scenario where you're getting your house set up and maybe you buy the thermostat. And then the next time you actually go shopping for the fridge, you go, I will get the one that's going to talk to the thermostat and the Apple TV.
Yeah.
I think that's how this is going to work.
Yeah.
Plain and simple.
I would love to see a day when the place that I'm renting out is advertising that they are a smart home. I think
like
that
smart
would
home
be-
features or whatever.
Yeah.
Like smart home appliances, smart appliances. And there's one other kind of thing we didn't really touch on, but of course, more than just having these devices learn our habits, there's also a little bit of some of this Apple iWatch. Some speculation is maybe the iWatch or the phone or whatever is really kind of like iBeacons, really actually telling your home which room you're in, or letting your home know when you're coming home, so it automatically unlocks the door for you, or turns the lights on, or when your phone is 5 miles away and you have your Siri telling you, you've already said, Siri, take me home, and you're 5 miles away, it can actually queue up the thermostat or something like that.
Yeah.
There's so many, it's not just these devices being complicated Netflix algorithms. It is that, but it is also them being aware of each other to some degree, even geographically. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, it's about transcending just that algorithm and bringing it into the physical world.
That is very well said, Shawn. On that, I think we should go to break and come back and talk a little bit about, I almost forgot already. Oh, yeah. Oh, speaking of GPS and geography and all of that kind of stuff, Google recording everywhere we go. But I don't mean that as a crazy thing.
Yeah.
That is
Because let's face it, Apple does too. All right, guys, I'll see you in a few minutes.
See you in a minute.
Very special one tonight, so thank you. Thank you for being here. I just hope it moves you the way that it has moved me. I can imagine what it might be like when my house knows and cares about my life. It will be so good for me. All the devices will see that I can be my own person. They'll let me be. Because I know how it will all work. They'll talk to each other on a Wi-Fi network. Each device will be alone, but they'll be together in my home. Because it'll be an iHome. I can do it. All right, this is the Technophiles Podcast, and we are back from the break. Tina, why don't you let us know what, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but since Drew's your BFF, why don't you let us know what Drew tweeted us the other day?
So Drew tweeted us an article titled "How to Stop Google Maps from Remembering Everywhere You Go All the Time."
From yahootech.com. Yahoo.com/tech/blah, blah, blah. Sorry, pardon me.
This is probably honestly not a thing I would have really thought about, except that I started using Google Now very actively recently.
Okay.
As did Drew. And it's funny because we get together and we both go, "Oh my God, do you love Google Now?" Because I love Google Now. And we get so excited about it.
Sure.
Well, a couple of weeks ago, I was, flipping through my Google Now. Their cards is what they call them. And It was like, parking location.
And yeah.
I was like, parking? I'm at work. I didn't need to know that I parked my car where I park it every day, but okay.
And you didn't run an app that set down the pin or anything. It just deduced it, really.
Google Now's been it learns you. The more you use it, the better it gets for you. Yeah. So fine, didn't really lose, wasn't going to lose my car while it was parked right outside my place of business. However, since this is Drew's article, I'll share a little story he told me, which was that he went to a Brewers game.
Okay.
And did not pay attention to where he parked his car and actually used Google Now to find his car.
That's the whole point.
Wow.
That's the point.
After the game, and there you go.
Right. And that's the point.
Yeah.
Now, iOS 7 or Siri, whatever we want to call it, it also deduces, I have friends who say, it'll say 20 minutes to go to this location. And you're like, what? Oh my gosh, this is when I usually go to the gym.
Yeah.
Or for me now, it always says hey, you're 45 minutes away from work. It'll take you 45 minutes to go to work right now. And I don't even have it in my calendar or anything, just because it recognizes your patterns. Both Google, Apple, they're all doing this. They're constantly recording your GPS data. They're deducing things off of that data. I don't know. It doesn't really freak me out.
I think it walks a line between weird and extremely useful.
Well,
because I love that Google Now it keeps track of places I go to frequently, and then it has added every now and then it'll add a new place and say, "Do you care about travel time to this place?" And if I say no, it ignores it. If I say yes, it adds it to my card pile. And if I get in the area, or maybe it knows that on Fridays I always go to the same restaurant, that card pops to the top and it's oh, this long to your your favorite place. And so on that front, it's incredibly useful. Does it creep me out a little? What else is Google going to do with this?
You know,
That's where I get weird about it.
Yeah, it was. There was a comic that I was seeing the other day, and the ending of the comic was highly inappropriate. But basically, it was saying is the more useful the technology. It was a little graph, and it was an exponential up. The usefulness of the technology versus the amount of like data that it's like
that
stealing from you.
Yeah.
And so basically, the more useful something is, the more data or the more information it needs on you. So it's one of those really interesting sort of things that doesn't creep me out. Like, I was thinking about it, I was like, oh, wow, that's really weird. I don't know if and like, I thought about it, I was like, do I really care if Google knows?
I think, big companies collecting all this data on us, that doesn't freak me out too much because who cares, whatever. And yes, there might be a day 40 years from now, 20 years from now, where that might mix with law enforcement ways that aren't particularly comfortable, or maybe it's amazing, or it might mix with insurance companies ways that aren't particularly fair.
Don't worry, David.
Or
after 7 years, it doesn't matter.
After 7 years...
You can't be charged for most things after 7 years.
Oh, sure. But I mean, you just see where I'm going with this, right? Like they might even, I hope the companies keeping this data for themselves to further their products and to learn more about their customers, I'm comfortable with.
Yeah.
This starts to become a treasure chest a little bit, and I'm worried about the day where some law allows that treasure chest to get open to other people.
That is where my brain went.
You know?
Like, one of the things she says in the article is like, people lie. It's a thing we do.
Yep.
If we don't want to tell somebody where we've been, maybe we should just be able to leave it at that.
Yeah. I have this weird thing in my life where I'm perfectly comfortable. I share my GPS. I use Find a Friend or Find Friends with my family. Shawn and I are on it together. We've talked about it on the show before. I have other friends in Milwaukee. We're on it. I have yet to have any issue with people knowing where I am. It's never been a problem. I never am really lying about where I am anyway.
Yeah.
And the truth is, I have found that I'm never really in a position where I have to say to Shawn, well, I'm going to go grocery shopping, but I'm not. I have to, I'd rather just say, well, I'm going here because, frankly, usually the truth is stronger than some bullcrap lie.
Yeah.
Well,
I know where you are at all times. Foursquare tells me every day.
It's not that big a deal.
Does it get weird or better for us, though, when it almost becomes Big Brother? Like, could we get to a point where, let's say a crime was committed and there's sketchy eyewitness views. An eyewitness says, well, I mean, that person kind of looks like the person that was in the area, but you can't prosecute on that unless you can get a subpoena to make Google tell you, to open up that data. And all of a sudden it tells you that person...
There's going to be, this is how it'll start. There'll be like a law there will be a law that at some point someone's going to push for a law where maybe they don't open up someone's entire... in this case, years of data. Is getting back to the article. That you can
but
go
if
in.
You're looking for that date.
Essentially, you can go to a website. You can log in on your Google account and look where you've been for the last couple of years, where Google Maps has recorded you. And certainly with iPhones running iOS 7, they're recording you every single second. We know this. We just know this. And I mean, Android is doing similar things. It's the world we are in right now. The thing that worries me, as you just said, okay, fine, when you can use it legally, I know I'm repeating myself, I apologize, I'm just kind of bringing it back to trying to get back on track with what I was trying to say. And that is, I think what it'll be, at first it'll be like, can we prove just for this 1 minute this person is here? And that'll feel like, oh, okay, that's acceptable. Yeah, we can do that. And then it's going to be, well, we need to prove that they've been here for a week, or we need to prove these 10 moments. And then it gets... all of a sudden, this is the slippery slope. This is the slippery slope.
The scary version of
it's one of those things where, like, I hate this argument, but it's one of those things where it's kind of like, well, if you don't have anything to hide, why does it matter?
Yeah, I know.
But at the same time, like, I feel like if you want to keep your location secret, you should be able to.
Well,
you kind of can. I mean, let's point out real quick that any phone you can permanently turn off it recording your locations. You lose a lot of features.
Well, I did want to mention that if anybody is a little bit freaked out by this, you can go in and you can delete all of your history.
Well, this article
from
actually
Google.
tells
Specifically
you
about this Google
exactly
article.
step
Yeah.
by step
Yeah.
And you can
how
also
to turn it off.
Yeah.
We should point that out. That's really what it was about. It's
Yeah.
like, hey, look, they've been recording you. You can go in and look at it. You have
We're
to be logged
freaking
in. It's not
people
open.
out
It's not open
everywhere.
to the world. You can go look where
Yeah.
you've been, and you can delete things if you want, if you're uncomfortable with it. I think, Drew, thanks for submitting the article. I don't know if there's too much more to say. GPS is a part of our lives, and it will continue to be, and it will just continue to be a part of our lives more and more and more.
Yeah.
Something like Find Friends, that's something where we're opting in. We're saying, yes, it's
Yeah.
okay for this person to know. I was thinking about this, like, well, can we prove that they were here for this one moment? And then that person goes, well, I have to then prove that I was here at this other thing for a different moment to counter-prove something else. And then,
I think this
Yeah.
falls into the bucket we've put a few other things in, which is this is like foreign territory to us. And so it'll be a while until we can look back and see the implications of
Sure.
it. Like we can speculate all we want, but until we really know how people are going to handle it and use it, it's going to be a looking back process. Like,
Yeah.
well, that happened. So now do we continue down this road? Do we change how we're doing things? But it's completely foreign territory to us
Yeah.
as humans.
I
really
could tell
is.
you how I would want that law worded.
Sure, that's fine.
If
Yeah.
right, so if I were going to do that and I was going to make a law about it, what I would say is, if you want to subpoena that information, the only information you can subpoena is, was so and so at here at this given time, right? So I can't say, where was so and so at this time. All I could ask for it was so and so here?
that's interesting.
Right. So basically, you are forced to
yes or
create
no.
vague enough
It's a
questions.
yes or no here or not were they somewhere else
Exactly.
necessarily.
And so-
Right.
and
Again,
so-
now, this feels good. We're wrapping our head around this. Is it slippery
Right.
slope? But I see where
Yeah.
you're going.
But I think that could definitely keep that slippery slope from falling at least too quickly. And it's one of
yes
those
or
things
no,
where,
yeah.
it's just a balance act. It's one of those things that
Here's a
everybody's going to try and take it to an extreme point of view because they think that's what's right, and it's going to go to both extremes. And
Now
trying
here's
to find
like a lighter core version of this. Maybe it's not acts of crime, but right now Apple and Google and a lot of the companies that are recording our GPS, they do have pretty strict rules about keeping the data in, and just conspiracy theories aside and massive national levels of security aside, for the most part, they're doing a really good job of obviously having that stuff stay secret. But I worry about I think about this every day when I drive. I'm not really a speeder these days. I've gotten enough tickets when I was younger that these days I'm kind of, I don't really push it anymore. You know what I
I
mean?
haven't gotten a speeding ticket in like a year.
The phone knows when you're speeding.
Yeah.
Apple and Google, they know if you're speeding or not. They know when the speed limit's supposed to be.
They know when you're breaking the law on a daily basis.
Could you potentially be driving? All of a sudden, you get a notification like, "Sorry, you just got a ticket."
Yeah.
Now,
Oh my
by the
gosh.
time that's totally feasible. That's actually totally feasible now.
Yeah.
But it would have to happen legally.
Well,
I
it's
would counter that with, however, I just thought about this. By the time that stuff starts to become a real thing, we might have cars driving us around anyway, and it becomes moot anyway.
But also when not everyone uses a smartphone or you don't have data on everyone, then you shouldn't be able to enforce a law. Like
that's interesting.
like intersection cameras are one thing.
because equal.
It's equal.
Yeah.
But not everybody carries a phone that's tracking them. So I would say that the law would come down fairly on the side of, unless you can track everyone, you can track no one. In circumstances like that.
Yeah.
Not necessarily in terms of like court cases where you hear or not. That's just data that helps bring, possibly a criminal to justice. But like in terms of a broad application, it'll only happen when you can tag every single person.
Let's do one more thing.
I would.
No, this is
if I may,
Yeah.
I would counter that by saying, well, what if you were talking about private home security systems? Would that information be admissible? Because
What are you
not
talking about? This is interesting.
Private home security systems. So, like, if I have a home security camera that records my front door, and there's a crime committed at my apartment or at my house, right? Because not everybody has that system. Is that information? Would that information
if
be
a crime
off
happens
Well,
in
no,
front of
I'm
a
saying
commercial
because-
space, if a crime
I'm
happens,
saying
we're not police officers here, but if a crime
Yeah.
happens in front of a commercial space and gets caught by a security camera, they can
you can
usually
ask
use
that person.
Yeah.
If that's private data, maybe that person has to volunteer it or something. I'm
Yeah.
not sure.
No, I'm saying that like if a specific crime was committed, and the data is available, that you should be able to subpoena it. I'm saying like in an application where you'd be sending speeding tickets to anyone who
Yeah.
triggers an
speeding.
alarm,
It's very Total Recall.
then everyone who just doesn't have a smartphone gets away with it. That's a little
That's- and
different
that's-
than like a particular
I
crime.
very much understand what you're talking about there,
Yeah.
and I agree.
Yeah.
It would have to be fair and equal.
So we'll wait a year and then we can do it.
Well, yeah, when cars, I'll have it in there anyway.
Yeah.
And then we can go into a super light, like G-rated version of this, where all of a sudden McDonald's is recording that you drive past them every day, and so then they can push a notification to you saying, like, "You sure you don't want that burger?"
Ugh.
I walk
And you're like,
past
"No, I
McDonald's
just drive past you every
Yeah,
day. It's
what
part of
if
my
it's
route
not
to
my
work."
fault?
Right? It's not my fault. I'm so tired.
And this goes into that iBeacon situation a little bit. This is
Yeah.
all whatever. We're being a little bit negative Nancy's right now, but it's something to talk about because we've certainly hailed GPS and
Yeah.
iBeacons in the past.
Yeah.
So it's good to have the pendulum swing here a little bit.
What we didn't touch on in the first half of the show, which this just made me think of, was that Google got caught a little bit with their pants down in regards to Nest when they admitted publicly that they did envision a future where your thermostat could advertise to you.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
saw that article.
I think that this ties in terms of being advertised at in a space that you don't want to be advertised at but also
Google
pertains to what we talked about in the first
loosely
half.
admitted that you'd almost get advertisements on the screen of Nest, or maybe the information, furthermore, the information that Nest is using to create its algorithms can educate Google, and all of a sudden your Android
ads
phone is
on your
saying,
phone,
hey, you want a
yeah.
sweater?
Yeah. So it's
And that's,
to be honest, I'm a little disappointed that I'm not surprised, but I am disappointed
What are you talking about?
in Google for the whole advertising on Nest thing.
Google's business structure is
advertising.
advertisements.
I know.
Everything they do
So can we
is
give
to
give
get data.
Nest back to the people who aren't going to advertise it? Because
Well,
I really
that's
want
why-
a smart thermostat.
This is why there were mixed emotions when
I
Nest
know.
was purchased by Google.
I really
Yeah.
want a smart thermostat, but not one that's
There'll
gonna,
probably be some others too.
Yeah.
Guys, I think we should cut it here. Great conversation.
sounds
Good
good.
seeing you again. It's been a while. We're gonna get back together next Tuesday and Friday after that. I know you have some vacations coming up, Shawn. I have one coming up.
I'm gonna be gone for a couple of weeks this summer. Not a couple of weeks in a row, but a couple of weeks this summer.
And so we might be dodging things here and there, but I think we might have a few people lined up to join us at certain times. So we'll just kind of ride through the summer. I'd rather just kind of do it, even if it has to be on and off, than just have a stop for a month or two.
Yeah, I'd say I could call in, but I'm not going to have cell service or internet service
You're
on
going
one of
to
those
be
trips.
full on camping at one of them, I think, right?
am so
Out in the-
afraid. I am so afraid.
Are you not much of a camper? I'm going camping this year. I can't wait.
I have never been full on camping.
Oh,
okay.
So I was literally, my friend was like, "Oh yeah, well you won't get cell service." I was like, "Oh no, that's okay. I'll just use your internet." And she was like,
What?
"Nope,
Shawn,
not."
what?
yeah, what?
So I'm legit a little bit afraid. Like I can go like a day without my phone. I can go 2 days without my phone, but like
You might be surprised at how liberating it is.
Yeah, right. Yeah. You'll be
Yeah.
fine. You'll be great. It'll be good for you. Until that day, where can people find you on Twitter?
people can find me on Twitter at ResidentAnthro and on YouTube, youtube.com/ResidentAnthro.
Marvelous. Miss Tina Urch over there. How you doing?
Fantastic.
Glad you're doing well. Where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at MKE.
Fantastic. We love it when people tweet the show, as Mr. Drew Nowakowski did. I can't remember his screen name or his Twitter.
Dr. Noah.
Dr.
There
Noah.
it is. DOCTOR.
Yep, spelled out.
NOWA. Our dear friend Drew Nowakowski, who used to be on the show and is not any longer, but we might be able to get him in here and there. I'm thinking this
Yeah,
summer.
sneak him up
Yeah.
here during the summer.
He was able to tweet a story to us about this Google GPS by tweeting us at Technophiles Pod. Of course, you can always find us on iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching Technophiles Podcast. You can also find our sideshow Technophiles Newscast on YouTube, or you can go to our actual website, technophilespodcast.com, where you can find links to all the stories we talk about. You can find some information. You can find, of course, the newscast posts are there as well. And that's about it for now.
Yeah,
We're just kind of getting back in the swing here.
yeah.
I think that actually is all of it. I'm David Geiser. You can find me on Twitter at Raptor Paint. And guys, I'll see you in a couple days.
Yeah, I'll see you in a couple
Sounds
of
Have a
days.
good weekend. just kicked my speaker. I might have kicked a hole into my speaker just now. Did you guys hear that?
I heard it.
I heard you bump something, but I didn't think it was that
I just
bad.
heard.
Oops.
All right, here we go.
Okay.
Let's do this. Hello and welcome to What is it? The Technophiles Podcast.
Technophiles Podcast.
It's been a week or
No,
so.
we just did this on Monday with Shawn, didn't
No.
you?
No,
Oh.
we
We
skipped.
fixed it.
Guys. Okay, then it has
It didn't
been,
work out. We had to reschedule, so it's been a week or two.
It's been a week and a half. Okay.
All right.
Anyway.
Hello and welcome to Technophiles Podcast. Yep, that's it.
Yep.